For the first time this year, we have got both Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy in the field for a PGA Tour event. Scotty coming off an injury layoff, Rory playing in Europe, and they are back in the field for this week's AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. For today, we're going to break down our thoughts on those two golfers, let you know where we're seeing value for this week in the betting market. It's FanDuel Sportsbook and the top DFS plays on FanDuel as well. Welcome on into the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Tuesday by Brandon Gdula. You can find him on X, Gdula13. He's on Blue Sky at Gdula. Check out his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior managing editor. Brandon, we are on to the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Scotty and Rory back on our lives. How you doing today?
Good. I think the dynamic duo in golf, though, is Scotty and Xander, which we don't get this week. So I don't know that Rory quite is in that conversation.
Do you think that Rory is more popular than Xander? This is a trick question because there is a correct answer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But okay, will more people be interested if Rory's in the field than Xander?
Yes, but it shouldn't be the case. Is Rory more popular than Scotty?
Potentially.
I mean,
internationally, I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's a big deal.
Why? Yeah, but why'd you say Scotty first? Also, Scotty's not even in the TGL. Rory, Boston Common just got they could not close the door. They could not fend off Tom Kim. You have that whole narrative this week. Can Rory even fend off, Tom Kim this week? There's a lot of people asking that question.
Rory revenge narrative, is that what we're going to pump here?
No, I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of revenge. He was dapping up Tom Kim and like Tiger when they were making putts. I need a little more.
TGL's too soft. They can't be friends. I want these guys to be mortal enemies. I want sledgehammers, not the hammer. I want sledgehammers on the course. So that they not for like tossing and like the weird floaty hammer thing. I want some back and forth.
You want the Triple H sledgehammer.
I do not. Absolutely not. Today, we're going to talk some actual golf. We'll break down a unique event, another multi-course event for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Of course, Pebble Beach and Spyglass both are in play for this weekend. Then we'll talk about some golfers who have done well at the setup in the past. We'll talk about golfers who enter in the best four. We'll break down our best bets of the week, top DFS picks, and much more. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, with you every Tuesday talking PGA best bets and DFS plays, but also next Thursday talking Super Bowl 59, our top DFS picks for the single game slate there as well. FanDuel Research Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. But also, what up, YouTube? It's our first show on our brand new golf-specific YouTube page, the FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page, which is where the Heat Check will now live every Tuesday, along with some content from Allie McCann, Ken Padgett as well. We're going to have some clips from these shows going up the YouTube page too. So go there. If you're watching YouTube right now, A, shout out to you. B, make sure you are subscribed over there. Leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. It does help us a bunch. And turn on notifications there to get notified as a new post goes up each and every single week from us here on the Heat Check side of things, to get you set for that week's PGA Tour event. The FanDuel Kick of Destiny is back, and this time it's every Manning for himself. The Super Bowl, two legends will take the field in a sudden death field goal competition. Peyton versus Eli, live from New Orleans. One kick to claim ultimate family bragging rights. Who will rise to the moment? Pick your winner now in the FanDuel app, and if you back the right brother, you'll earn a share of $10 million in bonus bets. It's the FanDuel Kick of Destiny 3. Make your free pick, and don't forget to tune in to watch the showdown live during the Super Bowl 59 pregame show on Fox at 3 p.m. Eastern. May the best Manning win. FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. For no purchase necessary, bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-79-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chat, Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Brandon, let's dig in now to preview the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. As mentioned, it is a 2-course event. It had been 3 courses prior to 2024. So if you're looking at event history, please note they will not play Monterey Peninsula Country Club. They also did not do that last year either. But please note that also last year's event, just 3 rounds, because Wyndham Clark just was too good. And they're like, okay, we got no shot. Might as well give Wyndham the trophy now. Let's end the charade. Wyndham is too good for the rest of the field. They're going to play at Pebble Beach, which is 6,972 yards in a par 72. Spyglass Hill, 7,041 yards in a par 72. They'll play 1 round on each course the first 2 days. And then the 3rd and 4th rounds will both be at Pebble Beach. So again, 3 rounds at Pebble going to make up the majority of this event. And again, it's a no-cut event, 80 golfers in the field. So every golfer will have 3 rounds at Pebble Beach and 1 round at Spyglass Hill. Brandon, as mentioned, a bit of a unique setup here because we do have the altered event history due to the lopping off of the Monterey Peninsula Country Club. What should people know, though, about the 2 courses in this event in general for this weekend?
Yeah, so both par 72s, as you mentioned, both short relative to other par 72s on the PGA Tour. Of course, with 75% of the holes coming at Pebble, that should get a little bit more of our attention. Wider fairways at Pebble, compared to the Tour average, but really, really small greens, 3,500 square feet on average. PGA Tour average, a smidge above 6,000. And we're getting POA greens at both courses. Pretty uncommon surface, all things considered. Bumpy, small greens. Greens aren't as small at Spyglass, 5,000 square feet, but pretty narrow fairways by comparison. Tends to play relatively tough. So you want to make sure that you're getting a lot of birdies at Pebble when you can, not really ejecting at Spyglass. There's more to it than that, but okay, what do we do with that information, knowing that golfers need to go through this? Well, there's kind of a couple different ways that you could look at it, but for me, my key stats this week, unsurprisingly, strokes gained approach number 1, but we see putting matter a lot at Pebble. It's basically like the recipe of getting birdie opportunities and then making putts. Putting is important. You can look at POA splits if you'd like. Just keep in mind that, again, it is pretty uncommon. If you look at like 20 rounds of POA putting, I think you're going to get a lot of noise there. You can look at longer samples, then golfers kind of change, maybe improve or worsen their putting. It's a little bit tricky, but the way that I like to do things is look at strokes gained putting and then filter in to a smaller degree some POA splits just to see who's maybe really bad or potentially really good, but I still want long-term putting. Strokes gained around the green matters, birdie or better rate. And again, going back to the shortness of the courses, proximity from under 150 yards, I think is going to be pretty important based on how tee shots tend to play at Pebble. So you already kind of mentioned this, like looking back at past history, past stats, it's pretty in and out in terms of the setup from what it is now. Shortened last year, signature event, no cut, not as many courses, but I don't think you can really go wrong looking at golfers who have a little bit of accuracy off the tee, good irons, and a good putter right now.
Now, you mentioned the small greens. Typically, when we are talking about small greens, we want to emphasize approach even more so than usual. And approach is always number 1 in key stats. Does it get bumped up for you given how small the greens are for this week?
So mathematically speaking, the smaller the greens are, the more important approach play is, which, tracks. It's still a pretty big percentage of the puzzle. I usually have it around 35 to 40% of my model, which is why I tend to be on the same guys a lot, just because it's a massive piece to the puzzle that doesn't change much at all. But yeah, I do bump it up a smidge, but that's already like not a ton because it's already really high for me.
Yeah, I think that's proper. I think that for me, it's more so like, I guess kind of the way I view it is going to be a bit more skeptical of golfers who may not be great with approach. Like there have been times where maybe I've been okay with someone who's kind of just like fine there. Like we talked about Max Grazerman at times during the winter. Grazerman's approach play is improving, but it's not necessarily like a strength of his. So I think it's like I'm gonna be more skeptical of guys who don't excel in that regard, and like maybe I'll be a bit more keen, to tiebreaker, like, oh, I can have Hideki Matsuyama's irons. Sure, I'll take that. So I think that's kind of the way, like minor tweaks like that, like using approach always being the main thing, but then using it also to break some tiebreakers if there are some guys I'm pretty close on.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As we dig into the golfers who have played well here, you'll see a little bit of a mix, but it's also important to remember this is a signature event now. This is not an event that everybody would play. So you kind of see some names on here based on how I sort things.
Right.
Total form over the last 5 years. So you'll see some golfers who don't have the best irons, but there's a lot of grains of salt, big old like heaping bowl of salt on the key stats, who plays well here, who we should expect to play well here. So very salty week.
So let's start things off with, as you mentioned, the golfers who have done well here in the past. I can't make like any sort of like, I guess Patrick Cantlay could be a little salty. So maybe that does tie in there. You're talking about grains of salt, a lot of salt in the mix here. Cantlay can be a little salty at times. So when you look at the golfers who have excelled at this event in the past, again, with the key caveats applying there, who has stood out to you in that regard?
Yeah. So again, I'm using event history. So it's going to be all three courses in some of these years over the last 5 years and total strokes gained compared to the field. So it's going to downplay some golfers who maybe played here last year and didn't typically play this event, but I still think we'll learn a little bit here. Leading the way is Patrick Cantlay, whose salary is $11,200 on FanDuel. He's 18-1 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook. Finished 11th here last year. Didn't play 2023, but 4th and 3rd in 22 and 21 respectively, and 11th in 2020. He was T5 at the Amex in his last start, giving him at 9 straight top 20s since the U.S. Open last June. So hard to argue against that form in really any form or fashion. Jason Day is next up for me at a salary of $10,600. Very, very lengthy history of good form at Pebble for Jason Day. He's got 9 top 10s and no missed cuts in 14 starts since 2008. The irons are actually really good right now, but the putter's gone cold, which is potentially like a buy low situation, but the salary, while not as high as it was last week, is a little bit elevated at that 10-6 number. Win odds are relatively short at 35-1, but Jason Day has played well here for sure. Next up for me is Tom Hoge at 9,400. He's 90-1. He won here in 2022. His other results, 12th, 48th, and 6th. He's played 3 times in 2025, finishing T8 at the Century, T45 at Sony, and T29 at the American Express. Next up, Jordan Spieth. Kind of Mr. Pebble in a sense, but the form is who knows. Haven't seen him since August, but no missed cuts here in 12 starts. 39th and 63rd the last 2 years, but otherwise a win and 9 top 25s in those 12 starts. So what do you bank on? I think it's a real sort of Rorschach situation, depending on if you want to buy into course form or more who knows current form. And then some other names that definitely not studs by any means, but Nick Taylor, salary's 89. Won here in 2020. He's got 2 more top 25 since then. Won the Sony Open for anyone who hasn't really been paying attention just yet. In January, T12 at Amex with good irons and putting. Probably a smart-ish value play based on that current profile. Bo Hostler, also not a great iron player, but 3 straight top 15s here. 3 straight top 20s on tour, including a T15 at the Farmers. Your boy, Mav McNeely, 9,500 is the salary. 2 top 5s and 6 starts here. Won the RSM in November. T8 at Century and 45th and 52nd since then. And then Denny McCarthy, another guy who doesn't come to mind as a good iron player, 8,600, was T46 at the Century with bad putting, which almost never happens for him, but then bounced back with the T16 at the Sony. And top 26 here 3 straight years. So yes, irons matter. However, it's not the most penalizing setup. And if you can make putts, you can still play well here. Again, all with the caveat, why aren't some of these like bigger names up here? Bigger names haven't always played this event in this span. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, that definitely does make sense. And one exception as far as bigger names go is Jordan Spieth, as mentioned, coming back here to play his first event as well since wrist surgery back in August. And as you said, we don't know his form right now, but Spieth has had times where he's been a tremendous golfer, and he had an explainable downtick due to that wrist injury, had some time off. He's playing 3 consecutive events, or at least that's the plan for right now, which I don't know, probably is not a bad indicator where his health is at right now. Any interest for you in buying into Spieth before we see what the form looks like, or are we expecting some rust here and you just kind of don't want to deal with the very obvious risks and downsides associated with Spieth in his first game off of that, or first event off that wrist surgery?
For betting, no thank you.
Yeah.
But for DFS, as I'm building out lineups, and we have a Scottie Scheffler conundrum this week with the salary being elevated at 12,800, you'll very quickly find yourself in this sort of potentially low 9,000 range. And there's not a lot of golfers who stand out to me. I do think you could make a somewhat solid case for Spieth, assuming he's healthy, but it's a big assumption. That being said, if there's a place for him to get back into form, and if he's going to be playing, Pebble's a pretty good place for that. I'm probably not going to get there. I'll probably try to get above or below, but I understand the rationale.
Yeah. I think that, like, in general, the thought process of I want to buy in before we see a course correction on this guy, I like that overall thought process in general. I just don't know if I necessarily want to get there, because Spieth was like kind of fine before the wrist injury too. So it's not like it was like if Scheffler were coming off a wrist injury or something like that, it might be a bit different. But like with Spieth, the form was more so mixed before then too. And also, like, I think I'm a bit higher on this range in general. I like Robert McIntyre quite a bit at 91. It's the exact same salary as Spieth. So I agree with you. No betting for me as Spieth. And for DFS, I'm not off of him. Like, I'm not saying I can see myself using him, but I probably won't, just because there are guys I like more. I see, like, is the gap and upside between Spieth and other guys in this range that huge? I'm not really sure it is. He'll probably carry some roster reach just because of the Pebble history and he's Jordan Spieth. I think there are enough things there where I'm not super itchy to buy into Spieth before we get some data on how the rebuilt wrist kind of looks.
Yeah, that's probably where I'm going to be. And you mentioned McIntyre, like, that's fine, but if you're trying to play Scotty, you're going to need multiple names down here. Oh, yeah. I think.
Rasmus Højgaard 84, you lock him in, then you put in Big Shot Bob, and you're working your way back up there.
Well, I mean, kind of, but not quite. Depends on where you want to go for that second golfer. But my point is, based on roster construction, I'm more receptive to Spieth. Otherwise, I would be pretty low.
Yeah, for sure. It's the salary that does draw us in, which is why we're considering for DFS, not there for betting. Let's talk current form now and golfers who enter with the best form as of right now. Brandon, when you look at your data, who stands out as far as swinging the best sticks at the moment?
So I use Data Golf for this last 3 months, which I know is a little bit spotty, but I also want to kind of account for layoffs and not just like your last 20 rounds or anything like that, which might not account for time off. I will just write off Scottie Scheffler here, who has only 1 start, and I need at least multiple starts here to sort of talk about anybody, but he's at a plus 5.3 true strokes gained per round in his one event, which was the Hero. He's coming back from a hand injury. I think you have to ask a lot of questions here, but based on the movement in the betting market, I don't think people are asking questions. I think they're just ready for Scotty to come back and basically win. He is 4-1 to win.
Does the fact that he cut his hand making ravioli change the outlook for you? Like, is there a ravioli bump in the model, given that's why he hurt himself? Or is that an upgrade, downgrade? I don't know. The narratives Scotty has blessed us with a lot of narrative data this year, in the past calendar year, about like arrests and stuff like that, but there is no ravioli data in there, at least to my knowledge.
Yeah, I don't have that in the model.
Okay.
I think that we're going to learn a lot about how healthy he is. I would have to think that he doesn't play until he's ready.
Right.
So I'm assuming he's healthy. And if that's so, I have him a full shot better per round over my long-term weighted adjusted data, which accounts for recency, bumps it up a bit, adjusts for field strength. He's just so much better than everyone, if we're being honest, that I want to kind of get there. But he doesn't really fit the narrative of like who we're looking for here. We're kind of looking at the golfers who might be a little bit more productive, I guess, with more than one start. And we go right to Justin Thomas, who is gaining 2.87 true strokes gained per round over the last 3 months. Finished second at the American Express last time out, was 26th at the Century. He has gained with approach in 8 straight measured events. T6 here last year in his first start since 2014. You know, again, a kind of similar situation where you see some bigger names play it last year, maybe not a ton before that. Rory McIlroy's next up. T4 at the Hero Dubai Desert Classic 2 weeks ago. 6 straight top 25s on the DP World Tour since the Tour Championship. T66 here last year. I don't think it's like the best overall setup for Rory. I don't want to have any real takeaways from TGL. He drove it great, which is like the most transferable stat. It's not the most impactful thing for Pebble. So I'm not like going to talk anybody out of Rory personally, but I would prefer other options from a DFS and betting standpoint personally. Ricky Fowler makes the list. He's at a 2.1. Low salary, long win odds, but this dates back to October. He's got a 4th at the Zozo, T21 at Amex, 4 straight top 25 overall for Ricky, which is kind of low-key sick. He had a stretch recently where he was like rounding back into form and then fell off. And maybe he's starting to kind of find things again. It's pretty clear that his peak is likely behind him, but I don't think that it's unrealistic that he has some stretches where he's playing some good golf. But 4 career starts here, none better than a T27, which was 2010. Last year, he was T47 for what that's worth. Kind of similar to his Spieth. I prefer Ricky to Spieth in a value sense, based on the form that we're seeing here. Next up is your guy, Max Grazerman, 9,800. He's at a 2.03. T48 at Farmers last week after a T7 at Amex and T24 at Century. Has not played here before, but the form's good. Just not sure I'm going to be in that upper 9K range based on roster construction this week. Colin Morikawa in good form as well, 11,800. He's at a 1.98. Second at Century, T14 here last year. Seems like a Morikawa setup for sure. Sungjae Im also playing some great golf. Sort of a non-competitive T4 last week, but bounced back after he had missed the cut at the Amex with 1 really bad round and 2 strong to great rounds. So he's basically had like 1 bad round recently. Feels like a good Sungjae course. More on him later, although he did finish T66 here last year. Keegan Bradley, his salary is 10,100. Another TGL bounce back candidate, I guess, but he did not.
The mustache rules him out.
He didn't play particularly well. I mean, he made.
Do you know why? It's because of the mustache.
He's got a high pressure season coming up with the Ryder Cup stuff too. So
it's a mustache. Okay. The mustache is not yet in his FanDuel like headshot. So maybe that gives him some leeway because he's not like, I don't have to stare at the mustache in my lineup at least.
Yeah.
But I will say that like the TGL struggles should not be a surprise.
Well, maybe that's what it takes, I guess, to
Shave.
find
Yes.
a green. But
Yes.
he's been golfing well, of course, which is why we're talking about him. Hideki Matsuyama, who I think is really interesting, also this week, 11,100, won the Century, T16 at Sony, T32 at Farmers, elite irons at Century and the Farmers. Not the best performance here last year. And then shout out to Sepp Straka, 10,200. He's at a 1.76, which is still pretty strong over the last 3 months. He won the Amex. He has gained at least one full shot from approach play, adjusted for field strength in 6 straight events. He was T26 here last year. And for anybody who really following along, there's sort of one value golfer who fit here, and that was Ricky. It's the studs who are in good form, and I think that's important for this week. Even without Xander, even with Scotty potentially not 100%, a lot of big names playing some pretty dang good golf right now.
And I kind of want to talk about that in terms of the betting odds, because we're going to go into our favorite bets here in a second. But I want to talk to you, kind of pick your brain in the second tier. Obviously, Scotty is 4-1, Rory 11-1, but then we get to a couple guys who are on that list. Justin Thomas 14-1, Colin Morikawa 14. Ludwig had that awesome round in round 1 last week and then tailed off from there. Cantlay 18, Hideki 22, Sungjae 25. All those guys are players you listed as being in pretty good form at the moment. Cantlay more of a guy with the good course history. If you were to bet one of those guys, I know you mentioned we might talk about Sungjae later, so let's slop him off. Don't include him. Let's say from JT through Hideki, who do you think would be your preferred betting value of that group?
Can you show me Hideki's name just for I'm cut off? So Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig, Patrick Cantlay, or Hideki. Who am I most likely to bet there?
Who do you think is the best betting value of that group?
True value would be Hideki.
Okay.
Best feeling though would be Ludwig.
Interesting.
He was battling some stuff.
Bent over, taking sips between practice swings. He looked like he was going through it.
It felt like he was just gonna run to a dominant win and then was sick and then did not win. Mm-hmm. Now he also was second last year here. And it was he lost by a shot after 54 holes. Wyndham had a great third round to surge ahead, but this doesn't really feel like a Ludwig setup to me, just based on how I think of Ludwig, but that's not really fair because he's so good at everything that probably every course is a good setup for him. So you asked me best betting value. My model is going to have it as Hideki, who, at 22-1, I kind of am worried about Cantlay. Morikawa's going to bust down the door eventually here, but the name that really, I think what you're asking me, maybe who I'm most fearful of not having, is Ludwig in a sense.
Okay. Interesting. I have 2 of these guys in the betting section for me, and I almost had a third of them.
Who's the third?
I'm not telling you. Not spoilers, bro.
Why?
We'll talk about it later. I was really close to having a third one. I think this whole group is very interesting. And in terms of outrights this week, these are the guys I'm focusing on.
That you would actually bet.
Yes.
Because you that's just not, as I've known you, that's not your usual process to target 3 names shorter than 25-1.
Correct. I have not bet one of them for that specific reason.
That to me, though, is telling me, and I kind of feel the same way, although I've started off my card a little bit longer with names just below Hideki.
I took a long shot that I shouldn't have. I think that's part of it is I'm tilted that I did that. I'm like, I could have used that somewhere else. Give me a cash out and I'll take it kind of thing. But
I know I say this a lot for signature events, but this one really does feel like one of the favorites is going to win because there's so many of them golfing so well.
And I think that there are several who stand out. We'll talk about that in the betting section here very shortly. But first, weather for this weekend. It's some wind Friday afternoon, but honestly, nothing too bad. So it should be pretty fine, I would say, across the board as far as weather in Pebble and Spyglass for this week. Let's take a look now at the betting odds over at FanDuel Sports. We kind of ran through these already just a second ago, but Brandon, let's talk about your favorite outrights for this week. When you look at the odds to win at FanDuel Sportsbook for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, who are your favorite win bets for this weekend?
So I know I just talked about liking Hideki, kind of liking Patrick Cantlay, liking Ludwig. It's just a matter of time before Morikawa gets one of these. He's been golfing so well. But the problem with that is the actual numbers here, finding them to be relatively tight at the top. So early in the week, where I ended up was with the next tier below this, starting off with Sungjae Im, who is golfing extremely well lately. He's got a bit of that, like, okay, he's finishing top 5, but not always necessarily in contention. That's just sort of narrative based. Like, with another shot or two, he's in contention and he's golfing well enough to close it out. I don't think he's going to be, fearful if he's in a final pairing with one of these other big names. But I think the big thing here is he missed the cut at the American Express, and we've talked about this, but he had one really bad round and then bounced back with 2 strong rounds. He finished T4 at Farmers and 3rd at Century otherwise in 2025. He basically was just rebuilding after that missed cut on a streak of 4 top 15s to end 2024. Basically give him 2 more. I know he missed the cut, but it was really one bad round there out of the 3. He's got strong POA putting splits. He's got plus accuracy. And overall, he is 4th in this field in true strokes gained per round, according to Data Golf, over the last 50 rounds, which, to simplify it, means he's the 4th best golfer in the field over the last 50 rounds. I think there's enough here with Sungjae for me to want to get in. And if I'm going to pick somebody else who has not necessarily closed out winning opportunities, it's Tommy Fleetwood. He is kind of out of sight, out of mind, has not teed it up on the PGA Tour since the Tour Championship in early September. But since then, he's got 6 straight top 25 finishes on the DP World Tour, 10 straight top 25s worldwide since the Olympics in August. So in that 10 event sample, he's got 10 straight gaining with a strokes gain approach. That's never a bad thing. And in total, he is the 2nd best iron player in this field over the last 50 rounds. He is top 10 in driving accuracy. He's got to make putts, but in a smaller than normal field, not saying it's super tiny, it's very competitive, you're not going to get a ton of long numbers, but Fleetwood at 33, I see enough value there. My model sees it. And with the way that he's playing a little bit, like I said, out of sight, out of mind, I want a little Tommy this week.
Now, how much of this is influenced by the fact that we don't have a Xander and Scotty's coming off a hand injury? Because if we're talking about Sungjae Im and Tommy Fleetwood, they're guys who push for top 5s quite a bit. They're in the top 10 consistently, but haven't shown the most upside. Does the fact that we have not as much star power or some, like, I don't know, tainted star power at the top? Tainted's not the right word. But, like, we haven't seen Rory in a while on the PGA Tour. Scotty's got this hand injury. There's no Xander. Does that play a role in you having faith in Sungjae and Fleetwood, given their lack of track record as far as actually, like, claiming victories?
I'm not a believer that great golfers can't win golf tournaments. Like, I don't subscribe to that. We saw it with Xander for the longest time. Like, oh, he's finishing top 5, but he's not winning. He has no upside. Like, top 5s are upside. Another putt here and there turns a top 5 into maybe a playoff. 2 putts get you a win. The bigger thing here is, yeah, would I rather have exposure to Colin Morikawa and Ludwig than these 2 names? Yeah. Do I think the number is appropriate? Not exactly with those other guys. So this one is about the numbers right now. I'm going to get back up into that, Hideki and lower range with one other name, just because I'm not going to go, egregious with any sort of outrights for long shots. So I can get some extra exposure to another name. But the names that I do like right now at these current numbers are Sungjae and Tommy. And I know you know me, but like Tommy Fleetwood can win golf events. Sungjae can win golf events. Just because Scotty Scheffler is in the field doesn't mean that nobody else can win. But also, I'm not betting Scotty Scheffler at 4-1. So
correct. And you know that I agree with you, given that I was on Xander last year during the majors too. But I had to ask, given that the perception of those two guys that they cannot win. So Brandon is on Sungjae at 25-1 and Tommy Fleetwood 35-1 for this week. You said you would love to have exposure to Colin Morikawa. Well, buddy, let me tell you, I would too. And in fact, I'm going to grab it. Colin Morikawa 14-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I actually do think that's a pretty good number for him, given the way he's been playing here recently. And I think part of this is because it's very possible he's adding distance, which Morikawa hasn't had traditionally. The distance relative to the field for Morikawa at the Century was his best since the 2023 Hero World Challenge, according to Data Golf. He also had plus distance relative to the field at the Zozo over the fall, and that make him more volatile. That's part of what we talked about with Xander over the summer last year was he was adding distance. That makes him more volatile in a good way. Morikawa may be following suit. The irons, the rest of his game were still really good. He was 14th here last year, despite, weirdly for him, very poor approach play. And if you look at Morikawa, since he changed his putter at the Masters last year, a 17 event sample, he has 3 runner-up finishes and 7 top 5s. That is a spectacular record. We're getting at 14-1 in a no-cut event where, again, the top end of the field is not immaculate as the way it may be in some other times. So to me, at 14-1, I do think Morikawa makes a lot of sense, and I think that's long enough for me to bet him for this week. You talked a lot about Morikawa, maybe this being a good setup for him. How long would you need him to be to bite for this week?
16. And
okay.
not get
so it's
there.
not far, but it's not far off. Okay.
No, but also if I make a concession like that on every pick, I think I'm doing myself a disservice.
Sure.
And that's basically what I'm finding at the top of the board this week so far.
Okay. So Colin Morikawa is one. Other guys strongly considered it and like wrote his name on the sheet was Justin Thomas at 14-1, given how good he's been over the fall. He played some awesome golf there. He looked good in January too. So like, I think both those guys are worth 14-1. I preferred Morikawa once I dug in more, but really close to biting on JT. Other guy I actually did bite on was Hideki Matsuyama at 22-1. He didn't play well off the tee last week in the track rounds that he had at Torrey Pines South, but the irons were electric for him once again. Hideki's been doing that for a while now. He leads the field in approach the past 6 months. He's above Scotty in that one stat. I know Scotty's above everywhere else, but in that one stat, Hideki's got him. Early returns for Matsuyama on the new putter are good as well. Been at least solid in that arena. He's had only one try at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and he was not good, but it's 22-1 for Hideki Matsuyama. What are your thoughts on Hideki this week at 22?
Yeah, I like him. I mean, it's so hard. This feels like a major. It's a signature event, so it's going to feel like a major. We talked about how all these golfers at the top are in really good form, and like, who do you nitpick out of here of who you don't want? I guess the only name is probably Rory.
I don't want Scotty at 4.
Sure. But you want Scotty, just not at 4.
Right. I would want Rory, but not at 11 either, frankly. And that's part of why I'm in this range. I think that those two guys are sucking up a bit more helium than they potentially should.
Yeah. It's not enough, though, to create enough value in that second tier from my perspective. But I still want to get there.
Yeah.
Depending on how things go. But as for Hideki, it's really hard to dislike what you see from him right now. We know he's one of the best ball strikers on tour. The putting is like stabilized, if not gotten kind of solid.
Yep.
We've seen him win twice since August whenever he's putted well. If he putts well, I mean, I get the upside case. So I'm with you where Hideki makes a ton of sense. But as we talk about this and all these names, it kind of squeezes things out for like top 10 potential, because there's a lot of names that might get into the top 10 here. And as you look at, okay, maybe you don't want any long shot outrights, but you can get access to top 10s, top 20s. If these golfers play over 4 guaranteed rounds the way that they've been playing, they're going to soak up a lot of those top 10 positions too. So it's a tough one.
It is tough. And that's part of why I have a different approach to my non-outrights this week. First of all, my outrights again were Hideki Matsuyama 22-1, Colin Morikawa at 14. I have a limited card. I typically wind up doing more top 20s than top 10s. And it's on guys who are like, close to being long shots. This week, I only have 2 top 10s. And they're both like non-long shot top 10s. They're guys who I think are like legit good at golf. What about for you? What wound up being the approach, and who were the guys you liked for the non-outrights this week?
It's a pretty small list, but I'm going to go with Russell Henley, and I'm going to go with a top 20 at plus 180. I know the upside for Henley is not always immense, but he's on my radar because he's an accurate driver. He leads the field in fairways gained over the last 50 rounds. He's a good iron player, 14th. He's a good putter, 14th there as well. The form at Pebble is not great long-term, just one top 50 in 5 starts. And again, this is a different setup, a more difficult setup in terms of gaining traction on the field. T58 in the no-cut format. So yeah, top 10 plus 450 is a lot nicer than plus 180, but I'd rather, cash it than miss it because my sides were set too high. And I really do think that there's some potential for this one to be, I don't want to say an all-timer, but a really, really good leaderboard going into the final round. And the other name that I keep kind of lingering on and coming back to in some form is someone who I tend to like when I do like Colin Morikawa for somewhat similar games. What?
Tom Kim, right?
Yeah, it's Tom Kim.
Love it.
He's plus 190 for the top 20. He has gained an approach in 6 straight measured events. The putter kind of abandoned him at the Amex. He also didn't putt well at Sony, but he putted great at TGL, I'll tell you that much. So might get a little bit of a confidence boost, but we know that the ceiling is pretty high. So I don't mind like stretching for a top 10, but his game's not flawless. He is gaining some distance, losing a little bit of accuracy there as a result. But for me, Tom Kim has the right game to want to get back there, but I'm okay laying off a bit and going with top 20s here on these other guys.
So you got Tom Kim plus 190 for a top 20, Russell Henley plus 180. I mentioned before, Hideki leads the league in approach the past 6 months per Data Golf's numbers. Number 1 is Hideki, 2 Scotty, 3 JT. Number 4 is Tom Kim in approach. And I talked about how I want, guys with good irons. Tom Kim would fit that. I didn't get there, but I think that it makes sense based on what you were saying. So Brandon is on Russell Henley plus 180 for a top 20 and Tom Kim at plus 190. As mentioned, I've got a pair of top 10s for this week. Both these guys were 4-1 at last check, and it looks like they still are right now. It's a pair of Canadians, Taylor Pendrith and Corey Connors, the 2 guys I'm going for a top 10 this week. Let's begin things with Connors at 4-1. Missed the cut at the Sony Open because his putting was hideous. He went back to the old Corey, which I was not super pleased with, but the putter had been looking decent enough before that. He's still an elite ball striker. The event history is not good, which does make it tougher to go higher than a top 10 for Connors. I did look into him as like a win bet at 50-1. I think he's 55 now. Couldn't quite get there, but for a top 10 with his ball striking, I'm pretty good at that. So I do like Connors at 4-1. Also back on Taylor Pendrith this week. He was like 13th entering the 18th hole last week, got a birdie on the final hole to cash the top 10 tickets. So shout out Taylor Pendrith for that. 4-1 this week. He actually did that 7th place finish last week, despite losing strokes putting across the 3 measured rounds at Torrey Pines South. And that was always kind of his calling card. So if he can now get top 10s while losing strokes putting, that's pretty intriguing. The approach play for Pendrith continues to be really good. Kills it off the tee. Not bad around the green either. And if you look back to 2023, Pendrith finished 7th here. This is not a signature event at that time, so it was not as good of a field. So take that 7th place finish, and it did include the Monterey course too. Take it with a grain of salt. Doesn't hurt, though, that he was 7th in that event. So I like Taylor Pendrith and Corey Connors 4-1 for a top 10. Any thoughts for you on the two Canadians, Brandon?
Did you like those Canadian flag emojis I brought back?
I did. Do you have like an automatic button in our Google, like our notes app or notes thing, Google Doc, to add in Canadian flags or no?
An automatic button? You just type in an emoji.
Is there a thing that you can do that has come up automatically, like a Slack bot response? Like if someone says Marcus or says Mariota in the FanDuel Slack, people will be like, "Get some help, Jim." You know, that kind of thing. That might have been, I guess, just a number fire Slack. I don't know. I don't know if it transferred.
Yeah, no, it did not.
There might be more official business on the other Slack. So, oh well.
Yeah. No, it is not. I did not script it into Google Docs, but I like Pendrith more. I kind of looked at both these names a good amount, but Connor's just not a good POA putter long term. Has not putted well on his measured, rounds at Pebble. That's my main fear for him for true upside with the top 10. I'd be more receptive to him for a top 20 based on how he's ball striking it, but I would side with Pendrith, frankly, if I had to pick one.
Okay, so you looked into both and count that as a win. So Corey Connors and Taylor Pendrith, both 4-1 for top 10s for this weekend. And again, Brandon's non-outrights were Tom Kim plus 190 and Russell Henley at plus 180. Let's transition now to the DFS section of the show and talk about our top picks for this week over on FanDuel.com. The way we've been doing this throughout this year, again, if this is your first time listening to the PGA version of this show, we've been doing just a scroll. What we'll do is we'll scroll through the player pool and shout out players we like for this week in the similar way we did on the NFL show and going position by position. Brandon, we talked about Scotty before, where we're not betting him at 4-1. I still like him for DFS. I don't think he's a must for cash games due to the injury, but like for tournaments, I still want to get there personally. Like if you give me one single entry lineup, I am putting Scotty Scheffler in that lineup. How are you viewing him specifically for DFS this week?
Really like him specifically for those tournaments because you're going to naturally be living more with a value tier with your, this is a new date format I haven't seen in a bit. Just kind of throw me off. Maybe not, but
I think it's new. I didn't notice that either.
But I'm sure people just listening are like, I don't know what's going on, but
we cater to watch. We got to shout out the YouTube crowd.
Watch on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
But the win probability for me, I mean, frankly, just in the betting market, if you want to trust that more than my model, which I totally understand, heavily favors Scotty. My win probability model has him around 18.5% this week, which is sick. If I sum up the next 6, it's 24.3%, which you couldn't build a lineup based on that. But like my point is, it's a lot of win equity to consider having, or just omitting because it's a little bit difficult. So I want to get to Scotty first and foremost. Sounds like we're on the same page, but if you really can't make it work, I understand not getting there, but boy, if he's healthy, it's another world right now.
Yeah. I'm on him for the same reasons you alluded to. Hideki, if you look at just, you're mentioning how he's a stroke better in your data. But if you look at like just data golf data, he is at almost first in the field by a stroke across the past 6 months, which does include like some summer data as well. I look at what I call a stroke gain to stabilization, which is like your past 24 rounds off the tee, 36 approach, and then 50 for short game for around the green and putting, because Brandon's data has shown that's where numbers stabilize. So I just call it stroke gain to stabilization. He's at 3.47 in that span. Nobody else is above 2.21. So 1.26 strokes better than anybody else in the field over that span. Like, honestly, I'm still considering him for cash games too. Like tournaments, he's a must for me, but for cash games, I'm up there too.
Yeah, I think that I'd have to build a lineup that I hated and not be able to build a lineup that I could tolerate. Just to be like, he's not really He's going to be in my bobble hat lineup. I'm just going to tell you that much, if that helps at all.
I was kind of hoping you wouldn't put him in there, but I'm going to use him too.
No.
Right.
I don't think he's going to play if his hand's not right.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree.
So the question then becomes, okay, you plug in Scotty at 12-8. Who's that? You like JT, you like Morikawa for betting, but they're 11-9 and 11-8 respectively. Where are you going next? Is it just Hideki?
Yeah, because I think that's where, like, I can write off the difference between 14-1 and 22-1 in betting, and there is a big difference there for sure. But the opportunity cost is not the same as it is in DFS. So to me, I'm skipping over everyone. Frankly, if after I put in Scotty and skipping all the way down to Hideki at 11-1, he's the next guy up for me as far as like a guy I want to use for DFS. Like if I don't have Scotty in there, because I wouldn't use Scotty in every lineup, I'm probably looking at Morikawa or JT as like my number one guy, being either $900 or $1,000 lower than Scheffler. But like it just feels a lot less. I don't know. I just don't get as excited about that lineup as I would one with Scotty.
Yeah, I think Hideki or Sungjae. Sungjae's a much better POA putter than Hideki, whose splits on POA aren't bad. Again, it's not the it's not the most common surface, but I think that it's different enough where it matters. Like Morikawa's not been particularly good on POA necessarily long term, and you got to like kind of split some hairs here. I think I'm going to go to Hideki or Sungjae. The thing I keep going back to is, 22 and 25 are very different numbers in terms of outright betting. But for just an extra 100 in salary, I do find myself going to Hideki over Sungjae, despite the small difference. Like it's about a 0.15 strokes per round difference on POA, but that's not a big enough difference for me to sort of base everything off of. Prefer Hideki long term, so I think Hideki is going to be my second play in my lineups this week.
Same for me.
For the most part,
Yeah, same for me. If you go with a Scotty plus Hideki start, you got 90-25 left per golfer for 4 slots. I can make that work based on the other golfers in the field, so I'm fully okay with that. That's a fine start for me. It does mean I'm not getting a lot in the 10K range, and frankly, I'm okay with that based on the names that are included in that 10K range. I don't mind Corey Connors at 10.5. I think Fleetwood's fine, but like no one here I'm like itching to play. How are you feeling about the 10K range? Because personally, nothing truly calls to me here.
I mean, it's names that I like. I will say Sam Burns kind of rates out pretty well for me, just statistical model wise. He's good on POA, but probably not going to get there personally. I like Fleetwood for an outright more than I like him from a DFS standpoint, just because the number's right at 33-1. Connors, we talked about him. I know Wyndham technically won here last year, but I'm not.
Don't say technically. Don't say technically. Come on. He won.
He won here last year.
Check still pays.
I think Sepp Straka is interesting. I like Henley, but yeah, for the most part, the 10K range is not where I want to go primarily.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's no one, again, who really calls my way. If I had to pick a guy in this range, like if I somehow wind up here, which I doubt would be Connors, but probably not super itchy to get there either. So let's go down. We talked about Henley a bit. So let's go with Taylor Pendleton at 99 and lower. As we scroll through the 9,000 range, what are some names that are catching your attention?
I don't mind Pendrith by any means. We talked about him for a top 10. I do prefer him to Connors, so saving a little bit in terms of salary is nice there. I'm going to shout out Tom Kim again. I'm warming up to him, especially if I like Morikawa. Their games just typically sort of overlap a good amount. Shane Lowry, I need him to putt better.
Yeah.
But I like the rest of the game. He's such a good ball striker. He's just not a good POA putter. So I kind of want to get, again, like it's part of the puzzle for me. If I see a negative for him and positives elsewhere, I kind of want to like take that to heart. So I don't necessarily love a lot of names down here. Like Hoagie's played well here, but I don't think Tom Hoagie at 94 is the right play.
No.
So I've been struggling to fill out, like I talked about not loving the low 9K range, which is why Spieth, for example, had a little more appeal than I would like otherwise. But who in the 9K range is jumping out to you?
Definitely Pendrith at 99. I don't know if I'll get back up there, and I'm not going to force it with him. Like, he's not a priority for me, but like, let's say I fill out my lineup and I wind up there, I'm going to put Pendrith in there and feel pretty good about it. Because again, finished 7th last week, despite not putting well, finished 7th here last year. Approach play has been getting better. He's long, he's accurate, good putter, improving irons. I love that profile. So I like Pendrith most 99. I think that Lowry actually is in a pretty good buy low spot at 96. Like last week, I know you were torn. You were like, okay, do I go with Sungjae Im or Shane Lowry? And it didn't matter because like Sungjae didn't win and you regretted it. But now Sungjae's 11,000, Shane Lowry's salary is 96. And Lowry in the one track round at Torrey Pines South, his irons were still phenomenal. He just putted bad, which can happen with him. Like that's very much a risk. But the irons are electric for Lowry right now. So I think if I can't get to Pendrith, I think Lowry at 96 is an awesome consolation prize. And frankly, I'm more likely to use Lowry because I'm more likely to claw my way back up to 96 than I am back up to 99 based on the way my lineups look so far.
He is someone I keep getting back to as I'm building out lineups, which is nice. I don't mind it. It's a good shout out not to just abandon ship after liking someone last week. So come on, Shane. Let's make some putts.
Let's make some putts, Shane. Low 9,000 range. The one guy I did turn towards, you mentioned Spieth a bit. I like Robert McIntyre, 91. McIntyre, I think just like a solid overall profile. Played really well in the DP World Tour over the winter. He's not super old either, so I'm more willing to buy into some games, but he's 28 years old right now. But yes. McIntyre is a guy who can gain off the tee, can game a short game. Irons for him are not elite, so not like the profile I necessarily want for this course specifically, but he can have spike weeks there, which I do like. So McIntyre 91 was the guy I wound up turning towards. And I think you said that you might prefer Spieth over him as well, or no?
I just don't like, I don't have a strong enough opinion on any of these guys.
Yeah.
McIntyre, he's very popular within like the golf discourse world, which I understand. Yeah. His game's not flawless. He's got upside, which is definitely worth like taking a chance on, but not certain about like the long-term POA splits. He just doesn't have much there. Hasn't played here. That's kind of my main hang up, but I will say his irons have been solid recently. So I think he could do worse. He is probably the name that I'm most likely to click on in this tier. Although it's more of a like than a love.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So let's go to the value tier. This is Davis Thompson at 9,000 on down. The one guy we've alluded to twice already is Rasmus Højgaard. His salary is $8,400. I talked about McIntyre taking steps forward on the DP World Tour over the fall. He was not Rasmus Højgaard. There is a reason we're on this guy at 84. What drew you towards Højgaard for this? Or I should clarify, Rasmus Højgaard for this week.
So he's got 12 straight events with positive approach play, according to Data Golf, and they adjust for field strength there. So that's nice to see. 16 of his last 17 as well in terms of positive approach play. The negative in there was minus 0.05 per round at the Genesis Scottish Open. So, I mean, I'll give him that one basically. No Pebble form, really, really small like sample on POA for the most part. Results were great, so hopefully that can stick. But even with Højgaard as, I don't want to say like a guarantee, you still have to do some digging to make Scotty Scheffler work, but Højgaard helps a lot. I think he is undersalaried here at 84. So it helps me kind of buy into, say Højgaard was 9,000, Scotty's 12-2, you'd play that combo all day. So
yeah, I'm fully fine with that. And Højgaard to me also the standout down here, $8,400. Like you said, was phenomenal in the DP World Tour, got a win, had some more top fives in that range, all catalyzed by really good approach play. And I know that like typically we'd want to go towards Rasmus Højgaard at like an event where we're nuking it off the tee, and that's not necessarily the case here. But like you said, at Pebble, the fairways are wide, so like he can just kind of launch it and kind of see what happens. He's not terrible in terms of accuracy, so it's not like that's a huge concern. But also, if you look at Data Golf's course fit tool, They do say that distance matters at Spyglass as well. So I don't think it's a bad thing that Højgaard has some distance, some giddy up off the tee. So I think he's a guy I do feel pretty good about here at 84. And my favorite value play, I would say by a wide margin for this week. So we're both on Højgaard, $84. Any other value plays who caught your attention? Let's say, again, from Davis Thompson at 9,000 on down.
Nick Taylor, talked about him in course history. The recent form solid too, but he's won here in 2020. 4 total top 20s in his career at this course. 1 in Sony, was T12 at the American Express. The irons are good. 5 straight positive approach play weeks, more accurate than he is long. I think that it's a good, he's a bit older, 36, has played this course a lot, has played it well. That usually feels like the kind of archetype that I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. The form right now is good enough for me to want to get there at 89. So I think Taylor's probably going to be pretty integral to my roster construction, honestly.
Okay, so you are on Nick Taylor, $8,900. Looking elsewhere in the value range for me, it wasn't like a ton that really drew my attention. I do want to say that Harry Hall is not yet in the player pool on FanDuel. He's 80-1 to win the event. He was a late ad, I think, when Grillo got scratched or bumped out of the field or something like that. So Hall not added yet on FanDuel. I would check what his salary is. He should be up sometime before Thursday. I would check to see what that salary is. I do like Hall's overall profile. He'll probably be in the 8,000 range if I had to guess. So I'd look that way. And then honestly, after that, I don't know. It's not a lot grabbing my attention. Like you talked about Ricky Fowler earlier on. I'm not totally opposed to giving him the swing 89, similar to Nick Taylor in the same salary range. And that's part of why, I guess I didn't want to write off Spieth either, is there's no one down here I adore this week.
Yeah, I mean, that could lend credence to really balanced, but I don't think that's the right way to go. It's so much win equity at the top. Fowler, I would say, is in consideration.
Okay.
Denny McCarthy's played well here. His salary is 86. Long term, now Aaron Rye's all right, 85. Yeah. So you have some options, but I would like to kind of play Højgaard and maybe get up to Taylor and not have to do too much below that, which basically means Scotty and Hideki / Sungjae, or potentially doing that, but not playing Scotty and playing, maybe you play JT and Morikawa, right? That could work out too.
If you go with Scotty Scheffler, Hideki Matsuyama, Rasmus Højgaard, 92.33 left, you don't have to go too far below there. You have to live in the 9,000 range a lot, which we don't love that range, but I'd rather do that than get super, super high in a bunch of value plays this week, personally.
Yeah.
Okay. Your loves for DFS this week at the AT&T Pebble Beach Open or at Pebble Beach Pro-Am are who?
Scotty, Hideki, Rasmus Højgaard.
I think those are the 3 for me too. And I'll put Robert McIntyre in that discussion too, just because the salary, I'll be in that range a lot. I think that he's my favorite guy down there. So I'll put Hideki, Scotty, Højgaard, and Big Shot Bob as my loves for DFS for this week.
You want to do a Nick Taylor, Bobby Mack?
Yes,
bet?
I do. Right. Love to. We had a bet last week, didn't we?
Yeah. Grazerman beat Finau, so.
I Grazerman, right?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Win picks for this week. You won the bobble hat because Gary Woodland withdrew. You were very kind. You were a good friend and allowed me to pick someone else. I liked nobody else in that range. So I picked Michael Kim, and it was Michael Kim against Matt Wallace. Both guys finished 10 over through the first 2 rounds. They were almost negative, which would have allowed me to maybe win with Woodland withdrawing in my lineup, which would have been amazing. Didn't happen. So you've won the bobble hat. You're up 3-0. I'm in shambles. So I got to make up ground somewhere, which means win picks. Do you want the 1st and 4th pick or 2nd and 3rd pick for this?
I don't know that we're going to pick the same names a ton.
Yeah.
But I'm going to pick 1st and 4th, and I'm going to go with Hideki.
Okay. That makes sense. Hideki Matsuyama, 22-1. What puts you on him over Sung Jae for that pick?
Well, I know you're not going to pick Sung Jae, so I can pick him
That's true.
now if
Yep,
I'd like.
You're right.
So that's part of it. But I keep warming up the Hideki. I wonder if it's a little too stingy to go with someone I like noticeably less for, you know, 25 compared to 22. But where I don't see a lot of value, I want to make sure that I'm not just constantly overreaching, which is easy to do this week for me at the top based on what I'm seeing. But I'm going to go Hideki mostly because I know you'd pick him otherwise. So
correct.
Yeah.
But also, like, you saved me a huge
like
dilemma because I was like, okay, I kind of want to pick JT for win picks, but I'd feel bad not taking the two guys I made my actual win picks in the betting section. So I'll just go JT and Morikawa and erase this whole moral conundrum entirely. Both those guys 14-1. I know you wouldn't take either, but it doesn't matter. It's picking second and third anyway. I just like them both. So I can have exposure to Hideki via like my actual bet and then get exposure to JT via the win bets. And I honestly like that's best case scenario. So thank you for making my mind at ease for this week. I appreciate it.
Well, now I'm back in a conundrum here. I guess Sung Jae 25. So I like Cantlay and Ludwig.
Yeah.
But I'll go Sung Jae here.
Okay.
If I could get those 25 in there in the bank, I like that.
That'd be a good cushion for you. Okay, so you have Hideki Matsuyama 22, Sung Jae 25, and I've got both Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa at 14-1 for this week. Any final thoughts for you before we close up shop for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am?
It's a no-cut event, but don't get careless. If your golfers are just at the bottom of the board, they may as well have missed the cut. So just keep that in mind.
I think that is good advice as always. That is all we have here for today, our debut on this brand new YouTube channel. Appreciate those of you who decided to watch over there. As always, leave us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel. That does help us a bunch. Subscribe there and turn on notifications to know as we put out videos each and every week here on the feed. Every Tuesday, we'll have the best bets and DFS plays in your channel. Also on the FanDuel Research Podcast feed. Brandon, people have questions for you on social media. Where can they find you there?
I'm on X at Gdula13, GDULA13, and on Blue Sky at Gdula.
And I'm on both X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work in the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your bets and your DFS plays for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been The Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast.